Hello, everyone. So today I wanted to talk to you about how to create a powerful social media strategy growing business. So let's dive right in. So if you're wondering who I am, I've been doing social media for the past 9 years. I've worked with national charity events, with businesses, as well as entrepreneurs, and doing large-scale music festivals for over 50,000 people. And one thing I noticed throughout all of these different types of clients is that some content gets shared really rapidly, while other content barely engages anyone. I wanted to learn about why that is, so I actually ended up doing my thesis on social sharing and viral content. And I wanted to share some of those findings throughout our webinar with you today. So right now, my current role is social media and content strategist at Ramp Communications. And we work with mostly charities and nonprofits, as well as social enterprise businesses. We're also a B Corp, which means that we're actually audited for our social, community, and environmental impact. As well, I've also been an entrepreneur, and I've launched 2 successful businesses before starting to work at Ramp. So I really saw firsthand how strategic social media makes a big impact for growing your business. I hope these tips that I'm sharing with you today can actually help you raise awareness, make sales, and establish better relationships with your audience. So let's talk a little bit about the world that we live in today. I remember going to Times Square as a kid and looking around to see so many billboards and ads all around me and being mesmerized by this. But going back as an adult now, I really recognize that I didn't even notice any of my surroundings because I was so focused on my own social media channels and creating my own content. There's really so much noise in today's world, and people are getting tired of it. They don't have enough attention for all of the information that's out there. And they're also starting to lose trust in ads and relying more and more on recommendations from people they know versus content created directly by brands. That's why it's so important to remember that social media is about people and not brands. Starting conversations and creating authentic, valuable content builds trust, loyalty, and generates word of mouth. As you can see by some of these statistics, investing in social media and doing so effectively actually impacts your brand's bottom line directly as well. So you can see, 92% of consumers trust recommendations from other people over promotional content that comes directly from brands. 71% of consumers are more likely to buy based on a social media reference. And customers spend 20 to 40% more money on brands that engage with them on social media. So there's really value in thinking about your social media strategy. So, whether or not you have a social media strategy in place right now, I'd really like you to take this time to think about how you approach social media a little bit differently. So, reframing how you think about social media and listening with an open mind. It's easy to say, oh, any millennial can post on social media. I really want you to think about it a little bit differently and not so much about posting for the sake of posting, but thinking about posting on social media strategically to make an even bigger impact. And that's why creating a social media strategy is so important. So what is a social media strategy? Well, your social media strategy is essentially your roadmap to effectively communicate with your audience and reach your goals. There's something to be said about actually documenting your strategy as well. So when you write things down, it actually becomes more powerful, which creates a map for how you can achieve success. And there are a lot of statistics around this as well. So when you document your strategy, you're actually 538% more likely to report success, and 81% of goal-setting marketers are actually able to achieve their goals. So I really like this quote, "A vision without strategy remains an illusion." And it's basically saying that, there's a big difference between doing your own social media for your personal channels rather than doing it for a brand. And when you're looking at your goals and objectives as a business, it's important to come up with a strategy to actually be able to achieve them. So why do we need a social media strategy? Well, if you're a startup, an entrepreneur, or a small business, you might not have a lot of time and resources. And having a strategy actually helps you save time and money. It also helps get everyone on your team aligned, working towards the same goals and evaluating content in the same way. It allows you to post more meaningful content, which helps you understand your audience and give them more of what they want and value. So it's creating content that's valuable versus just posting for the sake of posting. And of course, it allows you to create an engaged community, nurture word of mouth, and build relationships with influencers and customers. And when you have a documented strategy, it also allows you to measure results, obtain data, and then you can evaluate your metrics and insights and adjust your strategy accordingly. So a lot of the time we get approached by clients who say, I want to be on Facebook, or we need a viral video. But when it comes to actually asking why they're there, that piece is yet to be figured out. So when we talk about reframing how we think about social media, it's not just, oh, I want to post this cat video, but it's thinking about why you're posting that cat video. Are you trying to make people laugh? Is that part of your brand? And really thinking about why you're using these different tactics and what you're trying to achieve with them. That's where the strategy piece really comes in. So I wanted to give you a few examples of some social media strategies that we've come up with, recognizing that they are mostly for charities and nonprofits because that's who we work with the most. These insights can still be really valuable and can be implemented across a variety of different companies and industries to help you achieve your goals as well. So the first strategy I wanted to show you is something we created for our client, the Ontario Society of Professional Engineers. As you can imagine, an association of engineers doesn't always give you the best source for the sexiest content. But this organization does a really good job of including people at all stages of their careers, helping break barriers for women in the science, technology, engineering, and math career fields, and creating a community where people feel like they belong. So when you look at it from that perspective, it really creates a powerful story. And then, you can use that to inform your strategy, and then the content becomes so much more engaging. And the results that we saw were really great too. So we were able to increase their followers by an average of 77%. So you can see how the strategic direction actually informed the content, which helped us earn better results. Another strategy that we worked on is for the Alzheimer's Society of Canada and their Alzheimer's Awareness Month campaign. So realizing that there's some stigma around Alzheimer's disease and people tend to think of it as more of an old person's disease, if you don't have a direct experience with it or you don't know anyone who's had it, you might not really understand that stigma. So instead of just talking about it to those who have experienced it, we talked about it from a different perspective and really shaped it as giving all Canadians access to quality healthcare and making Canada a safe and inclusive place for all people, including people living with dementia. Now, that's something that most Canadians can get behind. So really, we took this topic that was very specific and reframed it to create empathy and make it more accessible to everybody, not just people who are directly impacted by it. And of course, that led to great results as well. So when we talk about how to create a powerful social media strategy, there are really 7 steps that you would take. The first is research, and then you want to think about your audience. You want to define your goals, measure your results, create a strategy, choose your channels, and then you'll see the last thing is the actual post. So the first thing the audience sees is actually the last thing that you're going to be thinking about. So let's dive into the very first step, which is research. So different ways that you can do research are interviewing key stakeholders. They might be internal people within your organization. They might be external people. You might want to review your strategic documents and plans. Do a SWOT analysis, so review your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I do want to mention that, when you do your SWOT analysis, which is a really great tool, the weaknesses and threats don't necessarily have to be about social media. It can be more so about, we don't have the time and resources to create content, or we have so many marketing activities going on that, social media just isn't a priority right now. These are all pieces that you can identify that aren't necessarily relating to your strengths and weaknesses on social media. And then the last piece is doing a competitive analysis. So looking at what your competitors are doing, what they're posting, and figuring out, what we can learn from that. So I'll really emphasize that, you can have a pile of data and information, but it's how you turn that information into insights that inform your strategy that makes it very valuable. The next piece is audience. So I would say this is probably the most important piece of a social media strategy because social media is about people, not brands, as we talked about earlier. So you really want to learn about your audience and then give them meaningful content that resonates. And every audience is going to be different. There's no set rule for what kind of content does best on social. It's going to depend very strongly on who your audience is. And how you can find that out is by looking at your social media data and analytics, but you can also use some external audience analysis tools to get a deeper understanding. And you want to really go beyond just the demographic information, so age, gender, location, and dig deeper to learn about people's behaviors, their habits, and their interests. So you'll see this quote on the right. People don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill, they want to buy a 1/4-inch hole. So that's a quote from our Harvard business professor, former Harvard business professor, Theodore Levitt. And what it's essentially saying is that, when you want to hang up a picture, you would go out and buy a drill. But you aren't really concerned about all of the fancy specs of the drill or how fast the drill works or all of those things. What you're really focused on is the outcome or the value to you as the consumer, which is being able to hang your picture at the end of the day. So the same thing goes for social media. People aren't concerned with all of the great things you're doing. They're more concerned with how does that impact me and what value does that bring to me as a consumer at the end of the day. So when you're thinking about your audience, just really try to think about who you're trying to reach, what are some of their challenges, and how can your brand actually help them? So in order to think about that from a different perspective, it's really a great exercise to create an audience persona. So what is an audience persona? I'm going to give you an example of one created by Starbucks. So this is Haley, the Humanitarian Hipster. She's a senior art director for an advertising agency, and I can promise you she doesn't work here at RAMP. So you can see some of her interests, rescuing animals, visiting Miami's design district. You can also see her demographics, so female, age, household income, but then some more information about her interests. So, she loves the outdoors, she's an active social media user, she uses her mobile device. And then Starbucks actually took this a step further to talk about Haley's goals as a human being. So Haley wants to come up with innovative tactics along with her creative team. She wants to create a campaign to pitch to a new client. And some of her challenges are, she works at a small agency. There aren't enough hands to get everything done. There isn't enough time. And she's trying to meet her final deadlines. And then, of course, we talk about how Starbucks can actually help her. So for Haley, it's providing her with energy she needs to keep her going, helping her stay awake during long shifts so she can finish all of her work. And then taking it even one step further, Starbucks created their marketing messages around these insights about Haley. So the message is high quality coffee with the perfect blend of sincerity and excitement. Or we're more than just a coffee shop. We're the fuel needed to nurture every human one cup at a time. So as you can see, this information actually helps create messages that resonate with Haley and provide value to her. So this is something you can do for your brand as well. So why do you need an audience persona? Well, it helps you define who you're trying to speak to and why. You can show audiences that you actually understand what's important and interesting to them. You create content that resonates with them to boost engagement. And you build stronger relationships with your customers, your followers, and your community. So I'll leave you with this tip. Crafting good content means providing value and giving more than what you take. So you really want to give your audience things that are valuable to them, more so than you're creating messages about why your brand is so great and promoting your own content that you want to promote. It's about what they want. So a good way to dive into a little bit more information about your audience is a really great tool that's on Facebook that not a lot of people know about. So I'll ask you to write this down because it is a really great tool. So you can go through and actually make it as if you're creating an ad on Facebook and get information about your audience, and then you don't actually have to create an ad. So when you go into this audience insight panel, you can see, the lifestyle and relationship status of people within your existing social media audience on your page. You can see their education level, but what's really interesting is you can actually see what pages they like and what things they're interested in, which is a little bit creepy, but it does give you a lot of really good insight into who your audience is. So for example, if I'm starting to see a lot of, parenting magazines and parenting resources in my audience's likes, I can start to gauge that most of them are probably parents. If I start seeing them liking, student discount cards and different student organizations, I can start to gauge that they're probably, completing their post-secondary education. So looking at the interests and likes, you can actually learn so much about your audience. And I've done this with a few people, a few clients, and they've been really shocked at the data that they've gathered. So looking at that, and then you can also see how it compares to the general audience and everyone else on Facebook. And then you can gain some more insights about your audience and create content that's more relevant to them. You can also look at your Twitter audience. Through the built-in analytics, it tells you a little bit about their interests, their occupation, and their behavior. But you can also use an external tool called Social Rank, which tells you the more popular bio words, hashtags, and emojis that people are using, so that you can speak to them where they're already speaking in the hashtags that they're using the emojis that they're using. Another tool for Twitter that I really like to use as well is called Twitonomy. And that allows you to see who your top influencers are on Twitter, so the people who have the most engaged following, the largest number of followers, and you can actually interact with them directly and build relationships. You can also see a list of when your followers tweeted last. So if somebody hasn't tweeted in a year, you might want to unfollow them because they're not very active to make room for more active and engaged people in your audience. And then on LinkedIn, you can actually see a lot of information using the built-in analytics, but there aren't any really third-party sites that you can use to get any more information than that. But you can use it to see people's country, their job function, their seniority, what industry and company size they're part of, and then their employment status as well. And then on Instagram, there used to be a variety of tools available, but at this time, due to Facebook's privacy law changes, they have removed a lot of the capabilities of third-party sites. However, you can use the built-in analytics once you connect your Instagram as a business page, and then you can see the time and day that your followers are most active, the top locations that they're in, as well as what hashtags they're actually using to find your posts. And then you can use this data to inform what type of people you're speaking to and create a nice persona that then you can create specifically tailored content for. So those are just some ways that you can learn a little bit more about your audience and then create content that's more relevant for them. Once you do that, you really want to start thinking about what your goals are on social media. So it's looking at the bigger picture, figuring out what you're trying to achieve, whether it's this year, in the next 5 years, or in the next 10 years, and thinking about your company from a bird's eye view. As we mentioned before, it's really important to write your goals down so that you can measure your results and stay accountable towards them. So these are not just your social media goals, but more so your bigger picture business goals. So for example, some of your goals might be to expand your brand into a new city, to find new customers, to get more people to attend your event, to increase brand awareness, or even get more website visitors. And I like to take the step of thinking about your goals and determining how to measure your results up front. So measuring your results can help you do things like find wins and areas of improvement, as well as adjust your strategy accordingly. You can choose the right partners and influencers. You can benchmark and evaluate performance over a period. You can get buy-in from your team, leadership, and decision makers as well. So all of these things are very important. So some metrics you can look at are impressions, which is the number of times that your content is actually being displayed. The reach, so how many people are actually seeing your content. But then something that I think is more important than impressions and reach, depending on your goals, is the actual engagement. So how many people are actually interested and interacting with your content. And then you can use that information to figure out your engagement rate. So it's how many reactions, comments, shares divided by the total reach, and that will give you your engagement rate. A conversion is, the desired action that you want your audience to take based on marketing messages that you're putting out. So that's another really great way to measure results. You can measure how many times people are sharing your content, which is also effectively measuring your online word of mouth. And then you can measure clicks, how many times someone clicks on something, and determine your click-through rate. So that would be your clicks divided by your impressions to get your click-through rate. And if you want a little bit more information about what all of these different metrics mean, you can actually go to the website here at the bottom and take a look at a glossary of all the different terms so that you're really measuring the right information when you're seeing how well your strategy does. So a lot of people think that, the key measure of success on social media is having more followers. However, high follower numbers don't actually equate to more people seeing or interacting with your posts. And we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get into the Facebook and Instagram algorithm and how it weighs your content. But the real key message here is that, influence is engagement. So you can see I've compared my profile over here on the side to Kim Kardashian, who has millions of followers. But despite having so many followers, her engagement rate for her posts is actually quite low. So because she has so many followers, she's not really effectively reaching them all, and they're not really engaging or interested in her content. So you can see why that cannot be as influential. Whereas if you have someone who has lower follower numbers, but maybe has a higher level of engagement, so more people are interested in what they're posting, more people are liking and commenting, they may actually have a level of influence that isn't as obvious. So sometimes when you're thinking about who to work with in terms of partnerships and influencers, instead of looking at the number of followers they have, look at how engaged those followers actually are and how people are really interacting with their content. So that leads me to talking about how to measure results on social. So a lot of people talk about return on investment as a way to measure your results. That would be taking things like your return, minusing your investment, and dividing that by your investment to get your return on investment number. However, this is something that's really hard to calculate on social media because you don't really see a direct return right away. And it's kind of like quantifying the unquantifiable. So investment can be things like your labor cost per hour, number of hours you're putting in, the cost of social media tools that you're using. And then return can be things like, how much does a customer usually spend? So using some of that historical data, talking about the conversion rate, or if you did a paid campaign for the same goals, what the cost of that might be. But a better way to measure how you're actually performing on social media, I think, is by measuring return on engagement. So that's the idea that your brand strength actually leads to reverberating influence. So if you look at the chart on the right, you can see two different examples of this. The first is return on interaction. So that's, someone, for example, let's say they go to your website and they see your follow me on Facebook button. So they go and they follow your Facebook page, they interact with your content for maybe a few months, and then they finally decide, I'm ready to make a purchase. You might not see the conversion of them going to your website interacting with your content on social media and then making a sale, but that does relate to the strength of your brand and your content. So while you can't see the direct result of them making the sale, you do know that creating that good content on social media did eventually influence them to make the sale, but it's not so easily measured. The same thing happens in the example on the bottom. So WOM stands for word of mouth. So you might have somebody talking about your brand, saying how great it is, making a recommendation to others to go and try it out. They might think about it for a while, they might follow you on social media, they might sign up for your newsletter, and then eventually, they decide, okay, I'm ready to make the sale. But you don't see how that word of mouth actually leads to the sale directly. So, it's thinking about how much thought leadership, trust, participation, word of mouth, and referrals actually mean to you and what their value is to you as an organization. And then measuring engagement can be things like comments, like shares, retweets, people downloading a white paper that you put out, social media referrals to your website, people filling out contact forms, and newsletter signups. It shows that they're interested and that they might want to make a purchase, but they might not be ready right away, and you won't see that direct correlation. However, the easiest way to measure results on social media is through key performance indicators. So this is just an easy way to start out when you're trying to measure your performance. And you want to really make sure that these key performance indicators are smart. So they're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So for example, let's say your goal is to expand your brand into a new city. You might make your KPI something like research and build a partnership with 3 influencers in a new city by the end of 2019. Or if your goal is to get more people at your event, you might want to create content with a register call to action to increase your event attendance by 10% in 2019. So you're kind of setting a realistic measurement and then seeing how the results of what you're doing actually live up to that or not, and then adjusting your strategy accordingly. So back to strategy. When we talk about how we can strategically achieve our goals, I wanted to give you a few examples. So the first goal, for example, is expanding your brand into a new city, which we talked about. Your strategy might be showcasing brand partnership opportunities to create new ways for influencers to get involved. And then success might look like researching and building a partnership with 3 influencers in that new city by the end of 2019. So you can see how the goal relates to the strategy, which then measures how successful you'll be. The second goal, getting more event attendees, the strategy could be communicating event highlights and posting attendee testimonials to attract new guests. And success might look like creating content with a register call to action to increase event attendance by 10% in 2019. So I wanted to just give you an outline of how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together and how each piece interacts with one another so that you can see why the strategy piece is so important. So the next thing I wanted to show you is a case study of a specific strategy that we did for a client and how that actually looks when it gets posted on social media. So the first piece of the strategy is positioning their brand as a thought leader regarding newcomer employment. The second is keeping the values they provide top of mind among business owners. And the third is informing employers about the free high-quality recruitment and HR tools available to them. So this is a brand that helps employers and employees gain resources to help integrate newcomers to Canada into the workplace more effectively. So when we look at the content, you can see how it directly shows that strategy being played out in social media. So get access to pre-screened job-ready talent so you can get back to chasing your dreams. No HR department, no problem. Our employment services network has you covered. Integrating internationally trained newcomers into the workplace makes life better for everyone. Or hiring tips for small business. Be clear about the role, be flexible, etc. So you can see how this positions them as a thought leader regarding newcomer employment, keeps the value they provide top of mind among business owners, and informs employers about the free high-quality recruitment and HR tools that are available to them. Another case study that we can look at is some content we made for Plan Canada and Because I'm a Girl. So they're a girls' rights charity. And so the strategy was igniting the movement that unleashes the multiplying power of girls by creating easy ways for Canadians to get involved. And then empowering youth as leaders of the movement for the rights of all children, especially girls. So when we look at the content, you can see the two posts in color, the ones with the blue. Every girl has the right to decide her own future, and let's empower youth to stand up for girls' rights really speaks to empowering youth as leaders of the movement for the rights of all children, especially girls, and it speaks to it very directly. And then the other piece, teach girls to be somebodies, not somebodies, or every girl has the right to decide what happens to her body. Let's make girls' rights a reality. Share this if you agree. Really helps create easy ways for people to get involved by creating shareable content that they can post in their own networks and get more people interested in the cause. So it's taking that strategy and then creating content that directly speaks to it to achieve the best results. So I want to briefly talk about channels. There are a lot of social media channels that you can be on, but I really want to focus on kind of the more popular four just for the sake of time. So Facebook, there's a lot of content on there competing for attention, but people do engage with brands on Facebook regularly. They're on it to connect and socialize and see what their friends are up to, and there's also a wealth of different features that you can use on Facebook as well. The issue is that there's so much content competing for people's attention that Facebook actually created an algorithm to help sort content that's more relevant to you. So things like active interactions, so people sharing, commenting, and reacting, actually rank higher in the algorithm, whereas passive interactions, so clicking, viewing, and hovering, actually rank lower. So what does that mean for your brand? Well, you want to post things on Facebook that generate conversations, and not just conversations between you and your audience, but also conversations between like-minded people. So things like live videos actually average 6 times as many interactions as regular videos. Content that's shareable actually ranks higher as well, but it doesn't have to be shared publicly on someone's timeline. It could also be something that they're sharing in private through their messenger. You want to really spark conversations among friends and create meaningful and authentic engagement through stories that humanize your brand. Twitter also has quite a lot of tweets going on, but people are talking to brands on Twitter more often. They also feel really positive when brands take the time to respond to them, and they are more likely to take action after a tweet. So that could be something like visiting your website, purchasing your product, following you on social media. So, it's important to think about why they're on Twitter. They're there to discover something new and interesting. They're there to get news. They're on it for customer service. They also want to have conversations about current events and pop culture. And they're there to live tweet, whether it's a sports game, a TV show, or other events in real time. So what you want to post on Twitter is really bite-sized bursts of information in 280 characters or less. You want to really showcase thought leadership on news and current events. So it's not just presenting information, but it's adding your perspective, adding your 2 cents to make your opinion valuable instead of just reposting for the sake of reposting. And I always say Twitter is the only place where you can listen and eavesdrop and jump into someone's conversation without seeming creepy. So don't just brag about yourself on Twitter. Jump into conversations, add your perspective, and post content that's really meaningful to your audience. And then, of course, there's Instagram. So also a lot of content happening on there. People are using stories more frequently, and brands are using stories as well. Brands are posting about 5 times a week on Instagram, and audiences are listening and taking action after a brand posts. So again, that's visiting their website, following them on social media, signing up for something. I'll also talk a little bit about hashtags. So using hashtags on Instagram is very effective, and using at least one hashtag can actually average 12.6% more engagement on your posts. So you want to really make sure your posts are being seen by more people, and using hashtags is an effective way to do that. People are on there to share photos and videos and tell a visual story about their lives. in real time, and it's actually more popular than Snapchat, so that's something to keep in mind as well. However, there's also an algorithm at play on Instagram that's rewarding posts with high engagement. So things like likes, comments, video views, saves and shares, as well as direct messages and story interactions get ranked higher. Profiles that respond to comments get ranked higher, and content where audiences spend more time is ranked higher as well. Your feed is also organized by likelihood of interest, not in chronological order. So that's something important to keep in mind if you're trying to post something timely. So you can see how engagement becomes so important on social media because it's actually making sure that your posts are reaching more of your audience and then they're reacting to the messages accordingly. So what you can post on Instagram is visually stunning content. Creating strong creative captions is important because, again, the longer people spend on your posts, the higher that your content gets ranked in the algorithm. So videos take much longer to consume, which boosts your algorithm rank. Carousel posts, so those posts with the multiple photos and those little slideshows, those actually take longer to consume as well, and you can add that swipe call to action to keep people on those posts longer. You can use up to 30 hashtags on Instagram, and I like to keep those below the fold just so they don't distract people from the content of the post. And then you can also start engaging discussions with your followers and use the stories feature to boost engagement as well. LinkedIn, so why are people on there? It's more of a professional resource. They're on there for their online resume, to network and connect with colleagues and employers, to research companies and follow industry influencers. You know, they might also be on there looking for a job, or if they're a company, they're looking to hire employees, and there's a lot of features that people can use on LinkedIn. What you want to post on there is really industry specific, whether it's white papers, case studies, presentations and webinar recordings, industry relevant articles. You might want to post about job openings and other work-related professional content. Okay, so finally we get to the part that people actually see, which is your post. So I wanted to give you an example of a post you might see in a content calendar that we've created. So I always say, you know, if it's not goals-based and it doesn't align with your strategy, don't post it. It's pointless content. It's not achieving any of your goals, so it doesn't need to be there. I think if you start thinking about posting content that's strategic, then you eliminate a lot of the wasted time in feeling the need to constantly come up with content. And instead you're posting content that is more relevant, it's getting more engagement, it's rated higher in the algorithm, and it's stuff your audience is interested in and things that they find valuable, which will lead you to better results. So when you're doing your content calendar, the top part is kind of the behind the scenes strategy. So you'll talk about what channel you want to post on. So in this case, it's Instagram. Your goals, so we want to generate interest in being a B Corp by highlighting employee engagement. And the content theme in this case would be an employee quote. Image copy, so that's the copy that goes on the image, is we believe in a better way of doing business. And then your post copy, it's incredible to make a positive impact, not just through our work, but volunteering in the community, lunch and learning about culture, composting, and saving energy. I love being surrounded by people that want to make the world better, and then my name and my title. So the call to action in this case is visit the link in bio to learn more about certification. And the reason it's, you know, in brackets, link in bio, is because we're posting on Instagram, so you can't direct link on Instagram, so we're putting the link in the bio, which is the only place where people can actually click on it. But if it was, you know, a Facebook post, it might say visit bcorporation.net to learn more about certification. And then our hashtags, if we're using any, so in this case we're going to use the hashtag B Corp Month because this post was directly related to B Corp Month and we want to get more engagement for our posts. And then the media we're sharing, so this is whether it's a photo or a video or a link, in this case it's a photo. And then I'll show you what that post actually looks like, so you can kind of take this information and see how it actually looks once the post is created. So you have your image copy on the image that says, we believe in a better way of doing business. And then on the right, you can see the post copy, so that's what actually goes into the post. And then this post is a combination of what you just saw in that strategic piece and how it would actually play out once you get to the audience part. So the audience only sees this, but we know that a lot of work came into actually creating this post that they would never see. So just to recap everything we just talked about, the steps to creating a powerful social media strategy. So you have your research, you define your audience, you figure out what your goals are as a business and how you're going to measure results. Then you come up with your strategy, you look at what channels you're posting on, and then finally the last thing that you're thinking about is the first thing the audience sees, which is the actual content of the post itself. So I'll take some time for questions if anyone has any, but if you're looking for a more personalized response to some of your questions about your individual brand, I'm offering free 20-minute consultations after this webinar. So I'll send you all a follow-up with a copy of the presentation, as well as some information on how you can book your complimentary consultation as well. So thank you for your time. Does anyone have any questions about what I've shared with you today? You can use the chat to ask, and I'm happy to answer since we have a little bit of time left over, despite the technical difficulties. You're very welcome. I'm glad it was helpful, and I'm happy to take some extra time if you need to talk about your company more specifically in our follow-up consultation. Great. You're very welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that this content was useful to you. Does anyone have any specific questions that they'd like to address about anything that I've shared today? All right. Great. I'm glad you all enjoyed it, and I'll be following up with you soon. I hope you have a wonderful day, and good luck with all of your social media efforts.